There's a reason that the opening scenes of the movie Office Space resonates with so many people. In just a few minutes of the film, you see something that feels very familiar, to most of us who are employed in the modern workforce. And what that is our feelings of frustration, confusion, the feeling that, the system doesn't quite work the way that it's supposed to. Sociologists call this the difference between the formal structure and the organizational reality. In other words, how organizations say they operate versus how they actually function. So today, I want to introduce you to the field of organizational sociology and share a few insights that can help you understand and navigate the workforce more effectively. Okay. Organizational sociology. All right, I'm going to make sure that you can see that. I think that you could use the information in this video to develop new protocols, maybe construct a committee. You could, even create some assessments where you measure, the culture of your workplace, how power flows and moves and things like that. So, I think your coworkers and your employer could be impressed. Maybe it would even, get you a raise or something. So let's get started. I want to make sure that you can see the board here. You might not be able to read everything, but I'm going to be saying everything that I write as well. So every organization has two structures. It has the formal structure and the informal structure. Okay? Every organization has these two structures, the formal structure and the informal structure. The formal structure includes things like the organizational chart, that shows the hierarchy of authority, the positions that people have. So within a college setting, it might be your board of trustees, the president, vice president, directors, deans, faculty, something like that. It also includes job descriptions, official rules and policies associated with that organization. The informal structure, however, includes things like who actually makes decisions in the workplace, because it's not always the CEO or the president or the leader, the named technical leader of that organization. And so we think about who controls information or how information is controlled in this area as well. And you also want to consider who people perceive as leadership outside of that formal stated leadership structure. Who do people actually listen to? Okay, so those are all a part of the informal structure. So organizational sociology helps us to understand both of these systems at the same time. Okay? So if you want to succeed in an organization or just kind of be able to have some sort of employee satisfaction or contentment, in your job, pay attention to who people listen to. All right? Who they listen to, not just who they report to. Observe the meetings that you're in. Notice whose ideas kind of seem to get traction. Those people are often the real influencers. Every organization has its own culture, right? There's the what we call the water tank conversations or something, or those side conversations that happen outside of formal meeting spaces, right? Those happen all the time. Those provide a lot of information about the culture of that environment. And even things like the personality of the leader of the organization can really shape the culture and dynamics of that space as well. If they're kind of quirky, or if they're very rigid, if they're, optimistic, have a very optimistic outlook versus a very pessimistic outlook, those things really shape the culture of that organization as well. Okay? So, what's the next thing? I don't think I'm going to write a whole lot on the whiteboard here, just a few things that I'll clarify. So like I said, sometimes this informal structure ends up being more important than the formal structure. The informal structure ends up being more important because culture is really in those unwritten rules. For example, if some workplaces encourage employees to speak up, that's a very specific cultural dimension of that workplace. And others, people who challenge leadership, they might quietly disappear from, certain key projects or never be invited to be on certain committees. In some companies, new ideas and innovation is rewarded. In others, they value stability and loyalty more than anything. So if you are, again, in an organization, which I imagine most people are if you work, you're in an organization, then spend time observing how culture operates within your organization, even before you try to change anything or introduce anything new. All right? So I want you to think about how people disagree, how leadership responds to mistakes, who gets recognized. These patterns will tell you what the organization actually values. Culture is operating throughout this entire thing, okay? This entire system. Many people assume decisions are made by leaders alone, but sociological research shows that decisions often emerge through networks of influence. People talk before meetings. They build alliances in the workplace. They might kind of test new ideas in informal ways, right, before presenting them to a leadership body. By the time the official meeting happens, some decisions are already shaped. So if you want your ideas to go further, don't introduce them, first thing in a meeting. Instead, you might benefit from talking to colleagues ahead of time, asking for some feedback on your ideas, really building some support and alliances. That tends to be much more effective than kind of a cold email or, just kind of bringing something forward for the first time in a meeting where there's not really a lot of time to process what it is that you are bringing forward. And then, if you do have those conversations beforehand, you can kind of have your responses prepared of what the leadership team might actually ask and some of the possible pushbacks that exist. All right? So I might take this down and clear the board to add some other things here. But actually, I think I might wait until the next video to expand on this. I think I want to talk next about the organizational environment. And that means looking at the external factors that shape organizations internally. And that's like a whole thing in itself, a whole system in itself that has multiple components. So in the next video, I will address that, the organizational environment. But in the meantime, if you found this helpful, let me know in the comments. Let me know what's one of the workplace patterns you've noticed, but maybe you've never fully understood. And if you're interested in learning more about how sociology can help you to navigate work, to navigate leadership in organizations, you should definitely subscribe to my channel. All right, this is Class with Prof. Eve, where we connect sociology with real life. I will see you in my next video.